If you're building a consulting company and struggling to build client interest through your online content, you probably think it's because that content is bad. The truth is that it's actually because you have no idea what you sell, who you sell to, and why they buy. So as a result, you're not really able to build systems that allow you to get the attention of the audience that you want. This is why I teamed up with Simon Schmitz, who's a content and positioning strategist that supports consultancy through his company Lemon Core, to build our joint consultant content intervention, which is a customized coaching program that we built for established boutique consultancies like ourselves, where we focus on defining the key reasons why your content is not selling the way that you intended it to and the path that we can take to change. If you're a couple of weeks ago, Tristan Campbell, the founder of Pro Actuarial Insights, joined Simon and I for one of our demo sessions that we're offering to consultancy founders. Check out the results of that discussion in this video here, and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a session just like this one in action for your own consultancy.
So what we're going to do today is a series of exercises to kind of navigate the reality or the kind of current state of your challenges, Tristan, as it relates to both content, but more generally the business positioning as a whole. The way we're going to do this, and you saw a video that I sent you, but for the audience's sake, we're going to do 3 exercises. Okay. The first one is going to be a discussion on the broad challenges that you face from a business perspective. So this isn't just content, but more generally how you're thinking about your business. Then we're going to do a brief conversation on the content piece. Simon's going to handle this one, and he's going to ask you some details in terms of how you feel about your content and what you want it to achieve. So we'll have a 2-part section there. And then for the final one, what we're going to do is prioritize the different obstacles that you're facing in terms of impact to your business, as well as the complexity of solving them, and talking about how Simon and I can help you navigate those. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds great.
But as I mentioned, what I want to do to start with is to talk about your challenges as a consultancy founder and running and growing it. So you've already input some of your answers here because I asked you to do this prior. But what I'm going to do is give you 2 more minutes to input any other challenges that you would want to discuss.
Okay, sure.
For the audience's sake, if it were one of you doing this, for instance, what this might be, this would start with a blank board. So, Tristan, what I want to do next is we're going to start to talk about them. So the first one is time it takes to create content. So walk us through what that means, even though it's relatively self-explanatory. But
yeah, it's never so much the time to think of the idea or have something in my head. It's almost like, writing the actual content, I think triggers something where it's, I think it's the writing portion of it. Like if I were to just tell somebody about the idea, I could I would be able to tell them and speak it out loud. But when you start writing it down, I start getting into sort of perfectionist mode of thinking, okay, this doesn't sound, I can write this a better way. This sentence isn't exactly how I want it to read. And I'll find myself saying that, doing that. And then 30 minutes later, I'm still trying to work on this one sentence in a LinkedIn post. And it has become a complete just time, black hole in a way. And it has at times where I just have to catch myself and say, okay, I'm spending too much time on this. And then one of 2 things happens. I go forward with something that still bothers me, or I put it to the side and say, I'm going to come back to it later. And then by the time you want to come back to that later, then I've got a new idea or something. I'm not as passionate or excited about the writing, the one that I wanted to do earlier.
I mean, is it basically just that perfectionism is kind of taken over time-wise when it comes to writing content, where those 2 things kind of are at odds with each other?
Yeah, I think it's that's essentially it. I think it's the difference between describing something to somebody in a meeting or just in a one-on-one interaction versus writing it down. You might say that this is similar to like public speaking versus having a one-on-one conversation where, somebody that can have a one-on-one conversation with somebody all of a sudden gets in front of a crowd and, maybe freezes up or doesn't say things the same way. I just feel like there's something similar, a mental block going on with writing, because I can think of it similarly. Like I can write an email to somebody and that doesn't, even though emails still take me longer than I would like. But I can do that. But so that I have this mental block with the content that is kind of, I know it's a struggle and I just haven't quite figured out the right way to attack that yet.
Is it? Yeah, go ahead, David.
Oh, sorry. How long do you spend on average doing one post? Give me like a number.
That's a scary question.
different. I mean, there's no judgment, by the way. Like, there's no right
Well,
answer.
I mean, well, here's the funny thing. It varies dramatically. I mean, and I'm always very proud of myself when I have just an idea and I'm either at my computer or if I get back to my computer and I can write something out in 10, 15 minutes. Of course, it's probably not ironic to you guys, but to me, it's ironic that those tend to be the ones that I get the most engagement and do the best. And it's because they're more conversational and it's just an idea that I'm getting out and it's free flow and it's natural. And, it's almost like I understand that. And I'm just trying to figure out how do I tap into that better on a more consistent basis. And that's the part that I think I haven't quite been able to figure out yet.
So that's actually a good segue for the next sticky, which talks about creating content that has one focused message. Because I think it's sort of talking about similar things, right? Like the feeling that you're describing is probably because you don't have a central message that you're trying to hit across all of these. So let's talk about that a little more.
Yeah. Let's say I don't know. I mean, let me let you ask some more questions, or how would you dig into that? Yeah, because
Do you have like a topic
Go ahead,
that
Simon.
where you always feel like, oh yeah, if I think about this one specific topic, I feel like it's easy to write content. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's AI. I mean, that's like and in the intersection of AI and actuarial work.
And so I would point out that when you talk about this, you may not notice, but when you talk about this, your eyes just like light up when you're talking about like the intersection of AI and technology work with actuarial work, which is your expertise. It's pretty clear that you care about this. So like if we're talking about a focused message, the focused message needs to be around something that like communicates that the intersection of those two things is important to the audience. So is the challenge here that you don't have a system by which to manage the process of creating content?
I think that's the core of it, but maybe a better way to frame the problem is it's not for lack of trying systems. Like I've got I'm working in Cloud Code all the time. I've got probably 5 different project folders
Yeah.
that are my different attempts at organizing content in a way that is helpful to me. And like, I just haven't found the one thing that sticks.
Yeah, well, what I would point out here is that this exercise is actually, or this point is actually not talking about automation at all. Well, what I would suggest to you, and Simon, curious what you think, is that this is more about the steps that you take every single time.
no, I think that's spot on. Like, I think it would be good to, if you have certain parameters in which you organize your content, where you think, oh, this is pillar 1, this is what I want to talk about, that feeds into a bigger one. Pillar 2, pillar 3, where we kind of map out these different ideas, where they fit in your overall messaging, and then how you can deploy them in a way where it keeps it interesting from a content perspective. It also works in a function where it helps you potentially get new clients or better leads.
100%. And I think what I've done is like, I think that's the core reason that none of what I've tried has worked is because I haven't, I think I'm trying to fit something into a box. Here's how, like, I try to design the box and then I just haven't been able to, think through and sort of be able to put on a piece of paper, what is my process?
Yeah, and one thing that I would call out, this is if you're watching this video, this is the most important thing out of this whole video. And if you can't figure it out, call Simon and I. But essentially, if you can take away one thing is take a piece of paper, and if you think about how you structure and roll out your content, write the process down step by step without talking about tools.
And I think it also helps with this exercise if you are somewhat clear of what the lane is you want to pick for your content, right? Where it doesn't feel like every time you do a new content piece, it could be something completely different from what it was before, where you have like certain guardrails that confine you into a specific lane, which of course can be sometimes boring to some people, but it makes the whole process a lot easier and also helps you write down those steps.
My question here is, you clearly know what you do. You know what your expertise is and what you need to be talking about. So what is the challenge as far as understanding what you're writing for?
The audience that I am trying to speak to is not cruising LinkedIn and reading posts, interacting with posts. My thought is, okay, I'm selling to either a chief actuary or a CFO. And yeah, they'll check LinkedIn every once in a while, but they're not living there.
Mhm.
And so that was kind of, I think that was then the struggle of that caused problems downstream where it's like, okay, then who am I? Like not having that clear then I think that, oh, I'm going to write about this day, but it doesn't really connect with, like, it's so disconnected, because you can do that even within the same level, the same world of expertise. I think you can be disconnected in how what you're talking about. And so I think what I've tried to align on recently is, hey, maybe the chief actuary or the specific buyer, maybe they're not on LinkedIn, but that doesn't mean that the people that I would be helping or working with, that they're not on LinkedIn. And so it's like, and so this is one of the reasons I've actually tried to, like, AI educational content, like, trying to put stuff out that I think is actually useful for actuaries.
Do you feel like you want to position yourself as an authority in the actuary space, where you put up thought leadership pieces, so to say, about actuary work and AI? And then by doing that, you attract the attention of peers, and those peers ideally are connected with potential client of yours at the C-suite level, for instance, that they aren't on LinkedIn, but potentially would see those posts through mutual connections. Is that kind of the thought process behind that?
Yeah, I think it's, yes, in short, 100%. That's where my head is right now.
To Simon's point, and what he's getting at, right, is that the relationship between content and leads is not necessarily as linear as people assume it is. It's not like, it's very rare that you post a piece and then somebody's going to say, hey, I want to buy the thing that you talk about in the piece, because that's not how
Right.
that works for anybody. What does happen is that you can start a relationship with somebody that is relevant to the thing that is being sold in the piece, and then over time you can develop a relationship such that you can sell them something. Like, you can nurture a lead rather than generating one offhand. It does happen. Like, you can generate specific leads off of pieces of content, especially if you have something very narrow that's targeted at a specific person. But in your case, Tristan, more than likely what we are talking about is, as Simon was explaining earlier, the purpose of your content should be to become the authority for other actuaries when it comes to using AI in the actuarial world. All right. Let's talk about the next piece then. So having a clear objective with each piece. I think this is probably related to some of the topics we talked about later or earlier, but primarily this is related to not knowing what to post, which probably means you don't know what the point of each post is.
More or less. No, yeah, no, I agree with that. And this is going to be, I think, with a lot of these, I think these are also interrelated, that we're going to probably, by the time we get to the last one, we'll probably hit on it. But I do think there's a somewhat separate piece with this, which is, I guess, like, you might call it scope creep, where, like, I start with an idea and then I keep going down that path, and it's almost like, oh, this would be a interesting, like, thing to add here.
Would it help, Tristan, if you thought about these different objectives of your content piece in the form of pillars, where you say you have 3 different pillars for your content? One is there to tell a story about the work you do. One is there to highlight your expertise. And one is there to cause people to take action.
The short answer is yes. And this is funny. When David and I spoke a few weeks ago, this is one of the things I kind of, like, and I've read this other place, but these content pillars. And then, of course, what did I do? I went and tried to make like 10 of them. So I think, part of this is like, it's just me, I guess, holding myself accountable. But I think it's you're unfocused in one area, and then you assume you're going to be focused in another area to make you focused in the area that you're unfocused. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the point of that Simon's trying to make in general is that, like, the pillars in and of themselves aren't that important. The important thing is that you have guardrails to understand why you're posting certain things. To your point about, having a clear objective, is that if you're posting a personal story, it should tie to some bit of expertise. If you're posting something about what you do, it should tie to something that you offer. If you post about a client story, then it has to tie to an outcome that you can generate for future clients. And like, everything that you post should be posted for a reason, even the things that get posted for no reason. Also, not every piece of content is posted to sell. That's another thing.
Sure.
So in that case, there's like, part of what we would do together, for example, would be to discuss all of those pieces of, like, not everything has to be super serious and landed like across landing a client. Some things are just to build an audience. Some things are just to be funny. Some things are just to be like real with people. And it doesn't all have to be like across 3 specifically designed pillars, if that makes sense.
You have to build a rapport with your content, so to say, with your audience, where it's relationship building in a way. And those content pillars, to go back on that, because I think it can be a bit confusing where it sounds very rigid, but as long as you can tie content pieces to those pillars loosely, where you say, sure, I talked about like how growing up, like I don't know, I had a bike accident where like I broke my forearm as an 8-year-old, if it's related to actuary work and there's a pillar specific to that, where it's life experiences, you can always link it back to that, where it shouldn't feel as rigid as it may
Yeah.
sound.
We already talked about some of this, but I'm curious for this one. How did you, is there anything different about this specific sticky, especially in relation to the one that we talked about before?
Yeah, this one I put on here, this is potentially going to take us into a, place beyond content specifically. So I'll go into it, and I'll let you guys tell me how you want to take it from there. But um, just with my business, and again, this is one of the big things for one of my big goals for 2026 is having just a much clearer offering of what I do, who I do it for. Just by the way things have worked thus far, got started late 2024, and I can describe what my expertise is and what I do, but having a very clear like here's outcomes that you'll get if you work with me and things like that have been maybe more difficult than I thought they would be to get really clear about that. And so this is kind of maybe your higher level reason, I think maybe is like, because I think if you really, that's my own, sounds all very reasonable. And of course, from your business, if you're in a business like mine, I mean, we should have a very specific offering that you can tell people, here's what you do and here's who your customer is. I think if you have that, then I think that's a big underlying reason that some of these other issues are I'm kind of struggling with some of this stuff is that having that grounding point,
Mhm.
I still quite haven't been able to figure that out, and I'm of course doing nothing but working on that and trying to figure out exactly what that is, and then be able to go out to market with it.
Yeah.
But right now it's still a little vague, and so I think that underlying factor is kind of maybe matriculating through all these other pieces.
Well, so to give you some backstory and for the audience as well, the reason why Simon and I built this offering in the first place together is that, for context, as Simon explained at the beginning, his expertise is in the positioning piece as well as how that translates into content. So, how companies think about translating into sharing their story. My expertise is in building systems like the ones that you're going through today, like the workshop, for instance, such that you can navigate the process of positioning from a go-to-market perspective. So the reason why we decided to build this together is that we both came to the conclusion and realized the same thing that you're articulating, that the process of struggling with content is actually not about content at all. It's actually about not understanding what you sell, who you sell that to, and why you sell it to them. So Simon, anything else to add there?
No, that's perfect. That's my favorite thing to mention, that like, yeah, you oftentimes when it just comes to content, like there's a deeper root cause, and David just mentioned that one. So I think we have a classic example here, which is great. Yeah. In this piece, we're going to talk about what your content should do in the future or going forward. So we have two sections here. We have a section where you can see the little heart, and then we have a section with the open hand. And then, so to explain to you what each box is all about, the heart box is about the emotional resonance your content should have. So your content that makes your ideal client feel like you understand exactly what they're going through. And then the right hand, or like the box with the hand, you see, that is about content that shows you've solved a problem before. You know what your clients are dealing with, and you have certain expertise in an area that makes people, when they read a content piece that showcases that expertise, they think, oh, let me reach out to him, or let's see what the next steps are for him. So the first part of this exercise would be where I ask you whether any of the challenges that we unearthed in the first section here, in the challenge section, whether any of those challenges you face fit either into the emotional piece or into the expertise piece on the content side. And if you don't see any where you think, oh, this could make for good content, feel free to just say that. But I think there might be a couple here that might either fit into the emotional or the expertise section.
I think there's some aspect of the intersection of AI and actuarial that fits into the like emotional space, in the sense that Whether it's, I don't think there's a big fear amongst actuaries of AI coming to take our coming to take our jobs, or they're going to be replaced by AI. I
Hmm.
don't know that I haven't really heard that from talking with people. But what I have heard is this: I know it's important. I don't know where to start. I don't have the time. I, there's an acknowledgement that it's something that they need to, that's not going away, that they want to learn about. So I think, I don't know what you would, like,
Hmm.
I'm not sure if you call it anxiety or whatever it might be. And so I do think there's some aspect of what I'm trying to do, which is to sort of say, look, I been in the weeds in this. I can help you. I know where to start. I've gone through this. I've kind of
Yeah.
gone down this rabbit hole, and so I know where you are right now. And I was there 3 months ago, and I've got a pretty good idea of some easy things that you can do that will sort of get you in the action mode.
First impressions, I think that's fantastic because it doesn't need to highlight a specific emotion. We can think about that to some extent more later. But I think
Sure.
it's important that you do realize this is something people in my space think about and that will stir up some emotions, whatever those emotions. So I would say in terms of the box with the hand on it, right? The one that showcases your expertise. What specific expertise would you like to showcase to your audience? And I think you touched on it a little bit already. I just wanted to go a little deeper here.
Uh, I would say like line level claims expertise, like a very deep knowledge of healthcare claims is kind of a grounding point, I would say.
Mhm.
And there's lots of layers beneath this of, what exactly does that mean? Um, but that's kind of the technical grounding point of the healthcare actuarial work in my world. And so and so then I think so there's that piece of it. Then there's the storytelling aspect to it, which is, okay, you can go through all of the, you can do all the analysis, but how do you turn that into a story that is helpful to a CFO? And you can tell them, one of my recent
Mhm.
posts was, what was the 3 sentence CFO report, like how do you distill it down into a story that is easy to understand and is the culmination of all the work that you've done.
When it comes to like what these topics should do for your business, like what would be the ideal course of action for you where someone reads your content and then it gets them going thinking, oh, I should reach out to Tristan or maybe let me visit his website. What are the next steps that you would envision here that someone takes after they read one of those content pieces on the expertise side?
Okay, and I can break these up into each of these three things, at
Mhm.
least where I am right now, is in the cross section of actuarial work and AI. Uh, you know, I started a Substack a few weeks ago, and I'm trying to post longer form, like actual how-to stuff with. It's called the AI Actuary. It's AIActuary.ai. And my goal with that is to provide a resource for actuaries to so posting stuff about posting content that crosses those two worlds. I'm trying as much as I can to have a funnel to my Substack from those, but that's really where I want to drive people because LinkedIn, you can
Mhm.
only it's content, it's great, but I mean, how much helpful stuff can you, you
Yeah.
know,
As an
you can't.
overall.
You have more opportunity go deeper in the Substack. And that's really where I think it's more valuable and where I'm more interested. Creating content for Substack is a whole other.
I mean, they can work together, right? You could think about it from a perspective of you want to drive traffic to your Substack, then LinkedIn serves as a nice teaser for that.
Yeah. And in the past, what I've done thus far is like I'll create a lesson and there's only two of these, but then I'll have a post, but it's a one shot deal and it's kind of just describing what's in the Substack a little bit.
That's one way to go about it. Again, there's like multiple ways to skin the cat or the dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of strategies we could employ here. And
So for the last activity, Tristan, what we're going to do is to bring the conversation back to the 6 main obstacles that you identified at the beginning. The reason why we're doing that is that I want you to think about all of the obstacles as an individual unit of effort that you have to complete to be able to solve. The problem is that there's only 24 hours in a day and you spent 8 of them sleeping, give or take. So, as you mentioned earlier, the big obstacle that you face is knowing which of these problems to tackle first and what order they go in. So, for this exercise, what I'm going to ask you to do is to prioritize them for me. you'll notice that there's 4 quadrants in the box. There's one that says quick wins, one that says big projects, one that says doesn't move the needle, and one that says deprioritize. I think you can kind of imagine what each of those are, but for the audience's sake, the way that I've split this is by defining the items that or defining an axis that is the impact to your business. So essentially, how meaningful is it going to be to you to solve this, with the big impact items at the top and the small impact items at the bottom, and then the complexity to solve that problem on the x-axis. And when I say simple or complex, I don't just mean tactically difficult or simple. I mean time-wise, money-wise, people-wise, basically every component of how difficult it is going to be to do that, solve that problem. If it's difficult, it goes to the left. If it's easy, it goes to the right. So what I want you to do for each of the 6 is I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to put the stickies where in the grid you think they should go in relation to that relationship.
Let's go with that, and we'll figure it out.
Let me zoom you out here for a second. What do you notice about where you placed all the stickies?
All having big impact.
Right. So here's what that means. Right. That means that you would think everything is equally important, and that's why you're stuck. You're stuck because you're seeing everything to the same degree of importance. In an ideal world, what we want to do, and what Simon and I's role is in helping you, is to navigate the process of defining what actually matters and what's going to move the needle for you. So if I gave you a constraint here as a second step of this and said you can only keep 2 items above the x-axis, which 4 would you move down and why?
My thought with this is solving those helps solve the other ones. I think the time it takes to creating content that has one focused message, I think that kind of gets swallowed up in those. Aligning on exactly who I'm writing for. I also think that I would say then my idea with this is the 2 above the line, if you get those right, they solve the other ones, or at least they make the other ones easier. But I think the other ones don't get easier unless you get the 2 that we've got above the line figured out. Did I pass?
I guess reflecting on where you started, does it surprise you that you picked the 2 that you picked?
I mean, the only thing that not the only, but maybe the one thing that surprises me the most is just the time, like the most visceral problem, you might say, or problems, but like the time it takes is the thing that gets felt the most on my end.
A lot of that piece is, and the point of this exercise to begin with, is that in your subconscious, you recognize that the time problem is actually not a problem. But most importantly, that you are actually more concerned about the process than you are about the time, because you found the time to do it so far, which means that it's doable. It's just you want to spend less doing it. So the reason why I have you do this exercise last is that, obviously, to bring it all full circle, if you think about the work that Simon and I are doing to kind of navigate that process, what we're trying to solve really, and especially if we work together, Tristan, would be to solve the problems that are above the line. It's not that the items that are below the line are things that we're not going to talk about at all, or we're just going to ignore. Is that the real problems are the ones that keep you up at night, which is the stuff that's on the top. There is like a small objective, or a quick objective we can achieve on the top right. And then there's a big objective on the top left that we need to achieve as well, which is who do you sell to, why you're selling to them, and what should your content reflect based on what you want to sell and who you want to reach.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense.
Okay. So that's actually the final bit of content, or the final bit of activities for the session. So how are you feeling now that we've done the whole thing?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I have a much better sense of where the focus needs to be. But yeah, I mean, I think being able to sort of talk through each piece, and sort of, I think the breaking it down also of like, okay, because when I first started and tried to put things on the challenges and the sticky notes, I did that first one right away, and then I kind of was like, what are the, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of difficult to verbalize them if you haven't got, so I think being able to sort of pull that apart and break that into certain pieces, which is, I think, how you solve any problem that's kind of you're trying to get your arms around. But I think that's definitely a helpful construct. And then, of course, going through the entire process, and the very last piece of just sort of saying, okay, well, if you got to prioritize, what are you going to prioritize? I think that's also kind of the full circle, and then just the whole process gets you there. But no, yeah, I think it's definitely it's definitely helpful, and it's definitely making me feel that, there's a solution in sight.